You're watching a remake video. The title of the old video and the video itself are gone, and it said Standard 7mm Nipple Wrench 209 Primer Breech Integral Flash Hole Pricker Powder Mini Ball Butt Wad. Mostly because I felt like doing an extremely juvenile, goofy title that at the time, as was the custom at the time, you'd put lots and lots of hashtags in your videos in order to get YouTube to pay attention. Then they got mad at us for doing it and said, put it in the title, and then later they said, put it in the first sentence. Now they just say don't upload anything and shut the hell up and pay us, how much money a month? Anyway, what was the point of the video? The video originally was about safety issues when people buy or modify things to work in equipment that can harm them. Now, we're going to be using words that make people giggle, so I'm just going to get the muzzleloader term glossary humor out of the way. A ramrod and ball screw can remove your balls from your bore, and oversized nipples screw into worn-out female fittings. Let's move on. If you have a 7mm tapered breech with an integral flash hole, only in emergencies can you reline the threads to work as a 209 primer pocket. That's from a shotgun shell. Because the M7 by 0.75 metric screw specifications have the major and minor diameter of the screw or bolt or nut or whatever you want to call it that they're made for based on these millimeter ratings. 0.69 or 0.68 for major diameter, 0.64 or almost 0.65 and 0.64 pitch diameter, and or minor diameter of 6.16 millimeters or 5.966 minor diameter. Now that works out in what we call America speak as 0.243 to 0.235 inch inner diameter. A shotgun shell primer is about 0.24 inches, 24 caliber almost. This means that you can almost but not quite get it in there. Now, what is this I'm talking about? The tapered and tapped hole that goes into the actual chamber where a muzzleloader fires uses a threaded hole to put in an object called a nipple. I'll be showing you in a minute. And that hole, if you just want to, you can just shove a shotgun primer in it, and you can make the thing work in a pinch. Only in emergencies. We're talking survival situation. Otherwise, go buy the right part. But if it's made for a smaller diameter, you can technically strip it back out by using a tap and die set to make it larger to fit the next size up. Nipple standard diameter and thread pitch tap standards you'll find on forums list all of these below. 1/4 inch by 28, 0.2425 or 0.249, or there's another one that's number 12 at 28 pitch, that's 0.208 or 0.215, or you have one that says thread outer diameter 0.235, because if you're not aware of it, threads on a bolt or any other fitting are going to be based on the biggest diameter, the smallest diameter, and then the average diameter within those threads. So there's like 3 numbers. Here's some others here. Now, this one lists the M6 by 0.75 millimeter or 0.23 by 0.24 will start to thread into a 1/4 inch 28 by 28 thread per inch female fitting, and then cross thread. And you can maybe DIY this as a tapered thread breech plug adapter, and you can also do it from a bolt. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up is also in the video I pointed out you could line it with either tinning flux or specialized flux and line it with another metal and just make a new hole for it. However, 1/4 inch and larger is usually oversized and won't work. And again, this was about muzzle loaders. It was a video on the safety of it and also involving using correct tools. I have another video up about if you're going to remove the primers from the back of a shotgun shell, use the proper tools for it. Don't just DIY it. You'll set the damn thing off. But anything that can be taken the wrong way will be taken the wrong way by a corporation, because suddenly corporations have feelings and a shit ton of power over us. See also the country of Britain dictating whether or not you and I can buy video games on the internet now, because they have a de facto ban on video games that upset a tiny group of people on a tiny island out in the fucking European Union area, but they deny being a European Union, of course. Anyway, this is the Imager page on it, standard 6mm, yada 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 yada. And here is almost the same statements here and a bunch of links. YouTube and Google are now deliberately avoiding saying what they're flagging your video for. It was for a link here. It went to one of these websites like an auction website, or a website like Track of the Wolf, where they sell you the parts and tools so you can do this safely. They're also ignoring the fact that they claimed that it was a prohibited item, but these are muzzle loaders. Muzzle loaders are legally exempt from prohibition of any kind concerning firearms in the United States. So is Google and YouTube somehow not in the United States anymore? Anyway, here's a picture of what not to do with a flare gun. And this is depicting a 12-gauge non-muzzle loader break action pistol you can buy in France legally. The citizens there get to have 12-gauge handguns without paying a $200 tax stamp. Americans have to pay $200 tax stamp. Anyway, that's a 209 primer break action smokeless powder 12-gauge handgun that takes cartridges, but you can convert it to a muzzle loader permanently, and it's made entirely out of metal. They get French metal, full metal, unregulated flare guns, and Americans can't. And I depicted an ATF agent getting mad that week. This is what happens if you actually load our plastic ones with even normal flares sometimes. This is why flare guns need to be metal. This was part of the video presentation. This is an all-metal flare gun from France. Yes, it can technically chamber a mini shell, and it can technically blow the entire front off and jam in such a way it can never be fired again if you're dumbass enough to do it, and you lose your $150 you spent on it, and the French government forbids you from using it again because you were a dumbass that used a flare gun as a real gun. Even though you can do that, you just have to know what you're doing. If you do it wrong and you're an idiot, they're going to take away your right to ever have that again. And yes, I want one very badly. And this is another picture of it. Flare gun porn. Okay, next. This is an all-metal flare gun, like it should be. And here it's Berard's The Modern Shotgun, a book on it. The Baker ejector. Closing the gun pushes the extractor against the breech face, yada, yada, yada. It describes a method for building a practical firearm. That's all this is about. And yes, YouTube will say I'm somehow promoting something when I'm not. Here's something about shotgun designs. And here's an ejector spring, the trip, the cocking arm. This is called the Southgate ejector or extractor. You can do either. Now, why am I bringing this up? This was in another video, and I figure maybe I should show you in this video before YouTube gets around to flagging that one. And this also demonstrates, if you can't figure out from the complexity, why you don't have this in a fucking flare gun. They have to be as simplified as possible. They're barely a firearm. The only mechanical parts, really, besides the break open, barrel, is that you can pull the hammer back and then you can release it pulling the trigger, and that's it. The newer ones you get have a safety button on it, but it's not compliant with gun standards because you can't just move it to safe or unsafe. It has to be pressed while you're operating it, which means if you have a disabled right or left hand, you can't send a flare up for help. Gee, that's ableism at its worst, isn't it? Love it, don't you? And I have a video up about how to fix it. This is how to put in a undersized item into a thread, a burned out thread, by putting this in, and it creates new threads by just using a piece of wire or a spring. Here's where you do your checks. This is somebody literally using a firearms nipple in this to figure out that he had a 5/16 by 24. That's American standard. Here's the information on primers, all of them. I have them on a web page that I built about this. And this also brings up the different types of primers. Normal shotgun primers versus these things. This is called a nipple because that's actually a term for it. That's it. And you have to have a square or box end kind of wrench or something like that to unscrew it properly. And this is the primer that it uses, and it goes over the outside of a metal tube. These are also called tubes in various languages that translated to the word tube. And This is about the same size as a cap gun cap. That's why some people will just use a cap gun cap and punch the metal bit out of a piece of soda can. And this is the thread pattern for it to have a flash hole that goes from here into the chamber to ignite. And here's a bolt diameter information. You got your major, minimum, and pitch diameters. So there's 3 diameters for every bolt or screw or nut. Here's a copy of what I had up originally. And this is what the shotgun primers look like here. Let me just show that. Let me see the view. Do I have a view image? Oh, I don't. Excuse me. We can't do that here. So I'll have to go like this and zoom in. These are shotgun primers, and yes, this is a shotgun primer conversion, the right thing to use. And now we get to the safety part of the video. If you are in a pinch and you have no choice, and it's a survival situation, like you're in the Alaskan wilderness and you need to get food. Okay, you can jam one of these into one of those nipples, as they're called, that we saw before, that looks like this, and that's fine. Okay, as long as you don't hurt yourself, you're good. But just buy this and put these kind of primers in and convert the gun over to this because it's much more practical. And yes, on websites that talk about proper period pieces for you to do this, or you have to hunt using primitive methods, so technically you have to have the disadvantages they did in the 1800s. I understand that. But this is a matter of practicality and safety versus futzing around with it. And again, all of this started off originally, it is a safety warning about using the correct tool for the correct job. Don't just muck about, and do some research. But YouTube flagged it, even though it could only affect muzzle loader owners that want to have something more practical when they're allowed to use it, either for legal reasons or for practicality reasons. And that deserved a flagging, and that's a spanking according to YouTube and Google. Anyway, that's about it. Thanks for watching. Have a good day. Good luck with that. And I think we need to make flare gun ownership more normalized. Just saying that. This is a throwaway statement. But yeah, my video was taken down, and they're not going to accept any appeal, period, full stop now, because they were wrong, and they said I put up a video that was promoting purchasing and sale restricted or illegal items when I was talking about going out of your way to get the correct tools for the correct job so that you're safe. And that's it. Bye.